So I am Doug Wood. I am the founder and director, one of the founders and directors of Americans for Responsible Technology and 5G Crisis. First, I just want to say I hope that everybody on this call is safe. You know, our hearts and prayers are with those on the front lines tonight, those that have family members that have been affected by the coronavirus, and those with family members who are in the healthcare professions out there on the front lines, putting their lives at risk to help other people. It tends to put our own problems in perspective. So our thoughts and prayers are with them tonight. Tonight, we want to give you some basic information about our organization, how we have organized ourselves, how we can help you get organized. We want to tell you a little bit about our national campaigns and hopefully answer some of the questions that we've been asked by people over the past year or so. Some of this may be old news to you. I can hear there are a lot of experienced people on the line, and that's great. But bear with us because we do have things that you haven't heard before. And I think hopefully the call will be worth it for you. First, a bit of housekeeping. We have a lot of people on the call tonight, so both on Zoom and on Facebook, which is really great as long as the technology works. Right now we are streaming live on Facebook, and hopefully it'll continue to hold up. We were thrilled to see such a big response to our invitation. I think we may have upwards of 200 or 300 or 400 people. We have 218 people right now on Zoom, which is just fantastic. So excited about that. So thank you all for tuning in, and thanks for all you are doing to help in this critical effort. Please make sure your microphones are muted if by some chance you get unmuted, and I will unmute you at the end of the call. We're going to do our questions via chat on Zoom and via comments or whatever it is on Facebook. I'm not a big Facebook user, but you guys who are on there know how to do that. But I'm muting your microphones. We love your kids and your dogs as much as you do, but you know, it gets to be a little noisy, so that's why I'm taking the prerogative of muting everybody's microphones. Let me just move on with our presentation. A Force for Change, that's the name of our meeting. Americans for Responsible Technology is a 501c4 nonprofit organization. I heard some talk about, you know, the different kinds of nonprofits, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later. We're based in Port Washington, Long Island, New York. We're about 30 miles due east of Times Square, so we're safely outside the red hot zone. Like many of you, we are working from home. And actually getting a lot of things done. So it's, thank goodness for Zoom and Facebook and our ability to connect with all of you, even during this difficult time. Our sister organization is Grassroots Environmental Education. That's a nonprofit 501c3 that Patty started back in 2000, and I kind of joined on to help her get her work done. She's the driving force behind Grassroots. And my co-partner here, along with Zoe, and we'll talk about that in a second. Grassroots, for those of you who are interested, Grassroots is on the web at grassrootsinfo.org, and you can see we do a lot of things besides the wireless issue. We've grown quite a bit. We've got 118 local action groups in 37 states. Our goal is to have one in every state, and we will get there eventually, I'm sure. Our goal is to create a national coalition of local 5G action groups across all 50 states, as I said, to raise awareness of wireless radiation and health risks and to promote the implementation of policies that protect the public from wireless exposures. We are not trying to be the national organization. I want to make it clear, our goal is not to be the national organization. You are the organizations. You guys are the boots on the ground, the local people who are actually getting things done. We can't do what you can do. We can organize, we can lobby, we can do research, we can create materials, but we can't make it happen on the ground in towns and cities across this country, but you can. And our whole goal is to help you do that. We've got a small team here. Here's Patty and myself. And Zoe Berg. I know a lot of you have spoken to Zoe. She talks a lot, Zoe, and we're delighted that she's part of our team. She's going to be talking in a few minutes about some of the things we're doing here. We're assisted by other staff members, including Allison, who keeps us organized, and Christine, who keeps us solvent. and Sean, who keeps all of our technology working, and Ellen, who works in our Westchester, New York office, and many, many volunteers and friends who show up and help us out when we need it. We are very proud of our very capable staff and the great work that they do. So a lot of people wonder, ask us, how do I get started and why should I start a group? Obviously, what we're trying to do is to give you a structure that can help you raise the awareness about the issue in your own community, and then use that network to advocate for policies and change in your community. And also, importantly, your organization into groups helps us represent you in Washington. When we have, 3 or 4 groups in a state or a congressional district, it makes it so much easier for us to get those meetings in Washington. And we can walk in and we can say, we're from Americans for Responsible Technology. We have, we have 4 groups in your state or in your congressional district who are members of our coalition. And that really helps, because members of Congress don't necessarily want to hear from outside people. They want to hear from their constituents. And your support of Americans for Responsible Technology helps us do that. And it's one of the reasons that we're so interested in helping you get and empower your local groups. One of the first things that you want to do is to figure out what kind of a group you are and define the scope of what you're going to do. Again, I heard some chatter on the call before we started. There are some groups that are just going to be very small. They've got a couple of neighbors. They're going to get together. They're going to go to the town board meeting, and they're going to, make their views known and present the science. Other groups are facing, much more daunting tasks. They've already got 5G in their communities. They're looking to hire a lawyer. They're looking to raise money. And clearly that is kind of that's the dividing line here. If your group is going to incur significant expenses and you need to raise money, you're going to want to talk to a lawyer and incorporate yourself as a nonprofit organization so that donations to your organization will be tax deductible to the people who want to donate. That's an important thing to do. It also gives you some shield against liability. I'm not going to give you legal advice. I will strongly suggest that you contact a lawyer if that's your route. Of course, you can select that at any time. You can start as a local community neighborhood organization. When things start to get bigger and you've got more of an organization you need to raise money, you can always elect to become a 501c3 nonprofit at that time. There are also techniques where you can kind of grow your organization under the umbrella of an existing 501c3, and lawyers can tell you about that, how an existing nonprofit can help you do that. Okay, I'm going to have to switch out of share mode and go over here and see if I can find my friend Zoe, and I can unmute her microphone. Okay, Zoe, it's all yours.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Doug. And thank you all again so much for being here this evening. We so appreciate it. And it's been such a pleasure getting to know so many of you over the phone. It's definitely the silver lining of this important fight is meeting all of, so many wonderful, caring folks out there that are looking to make a positive impact on the world and get the message out about this really critical emerging public health issue. So thank you. So I just wanted to touch on a couple of things related to social media and getting started if you are looking to establish a local group, a local action group in your area. So obviously the first step would be to give your group a name and include the name of your community in the title. So for instance, if you live in Billings, Montana, you could name your group Billings for Responsible Technology, or depending on the scope of your group, Montana for Responsible Technology. And just for 1 second, I was hoping we could consider this. If we all had the same tagline at the end of our group names, we would look like a more unified, organized, and structured nationwide grassroots movement. So if everyone had For Responsible Technology at the end of their names, it could help with that. But whatever you decide to name your group, just note that you will attract more people to join your efforts if the title suggests that you are for something rather than against something. Putting a positive spin on it is always good. Then the next step is starting a Facebook page or a group. I always suggest that folks create a social media presence on Facebook, at least to start. From my experience, I found Facebook to be the premier platform for organizing large groups of people, sharing content, having thoughtful conversation, and engaging with family and friends. So if you decide to take the Facebook route, you can either create a page or a group. A page gives the designated administrators more control over the content that gets posted, whereas with a group, often any and all group members can post news items to the group feed, which would result in reduced administrative control over the content posted. So basically, if you want your social media presence to serve as a thoroughly vetted clearinghouse of information for the public, go with the page. If you don't mind others sharing information and having limited control over what's shared, then I'd go with the group. The next step, inviting friends to like your new page to generate a preliminary following and encouraging them to share content from your channel with their friends and family to help you continue to build that solid base of support. So now we're going to go on to the next slide. Here we are. Thank you, Doug. Populating social media with content. Okay, so here we're getting into the meaty stuff. Posting information from reputable sources. Credibility is everything. That's why all of us have to be hyper-focused on posting content that can be traced back to independent scientific sources. If you're sharing a news article, share information from an accredited institution like the California Department of Public Health or the American Academy of Pediatrics. Members of the public, and particularly our legislators, will only be willing to listen and learn about wireless radiation health risks if our collective messaging is rooted in facts. Okay, so number 2, deleting inappropriate information or hyperbolic language. Administrators of your group's social media channel should constantly scan the news feed and comment sections for inappropriate content and hyperbolic language. Using phrases like 5G kills will corrode our efforts and reduce, it will impact the legitimacy to this public health issue and taint overall our group's your group's credibility. So it's really important to keep that in mind. Number 3 here, Canva. Canva, which is C as in cat, ANVA.com, is a great free platform to give your posts a professional look. So if you want a particularly polished social media presence, I would highly suggest that tool. And then number 4 here, posting content at least once a day. So keeping your page updated and active is what draws new people to join your efforts. I've found peak hours of engagement on Facebook to be 11 a.m., 1 p.m., and 4 p.m. on weekdays, and on weekends, peak hours of engagement are 11 a.m. and 2 p.m. On our Americans for Responsible Technology Facebook page, I do my best to post unique and engaging content at all peak hours of the week. I also make an effort to switch up the type of content posted so that the information doesn't take a monotonous form. So one morning I could post a 30-second video of a doctor speaking. The next I could share a blog post about the latest FCC actions related to 5G and wireless. So before I hand the baton over back to Doug, I wanted to just include 2 quick final notes that are not included here. But to quickly grow your action group, I'd suggest reaching out and building relations with other locals working on related issues. Maybe there's an environmental awareness group you could connect with, or a cancer prevention group, or a senior center. The point is, this movement, like all social movements, is about networking and getting creative. You never know where you're going to meet the next activist, so don't be shy about sharing your group's information where you think it could stick. And then lastly, please just don't assume that Facebook is the end-all be-all of digital organizing. Communicating via email serves as a powerful tool when organizing online, especially if you keep your emails concise with clear calls to action. And with that, thank you very much.
Thanks, Zoe.
Okay, thanks.
Great, appreciate it. So I'm going to leave your mic unmuted so that you can chime in when you need to. Um, for those of you who have not seen the 5G Crisis Toolkit, I just wanted to give you a quick overview. This is not all the things that are on there, but I just wanted to go highlight a couple of the things that we have. I think many of you know that we have a sample 5G code. We collected the kind of the best ideas from around the country and wrote them up into a municipal code that any town or city or village could adopt as is. I don't really expect that anybody will do that. Town attorneys want to look as though they're going to earn their money. So if they take ideas out of here and cut and paste into their own code, that's fine. That's really, that's what we're hoping for. And let me also say, these are not the only ideas out there. There are really, really smart people out there coming up with new ideas every day. We try to keep abreast of them. We just put out a new sample code, I think just last month or the month before, and it's a work in progress. We will continue to update it, but it really is worth downloading and giving to your town attorney, because he may see things in there and think, gee, I hadn't thought of that. That's a good idea. We could do that. And let me also say that in many cases, even if the code that exists doesn't include certain kinds of protections for your town, those protections may be able to be written into the contract between the town and the company that's going to be installing the antennas. There's usually a contract written between them that specifies, you know, certain things that are unique to the town. So you might talk to your attorney about that. Right under that is our basic flyer. This is the flyer that we began using in Washington. It's 2 pages. It's the one with the purple or the blue thing at the top there. You can download that again off the toolkit and either take it to Staples or Office Depot and have them printed. It's a 2-sided thing, or if you have a 2-sided printer, you can print it yourself. Our door hangers are have become tremendously popular. They're really great at getting neighborhood awareness about 5G and just the very basics of what it is and why people should be concerned about it. And this door hangers was the subject of a Supreme Court decision. It is free speech. You are absolutely allowed in any municipality to hang one of these door hangers on anybody's door. You can't knock on the door necessarily. You can't bother people. You can't put it in the mailbox, but you certainly can hang it on their door. On the upper right beside that are 18-page wireless radiation, undeniable risk to human health. This is an annotated and very well done kind of the history of the science of wireless radiation starting in 1996. Now I know obviously there was a lot of research that happened before then. The reason we picked 1996 is that's when they first documented the DNA strand breaks from exposure to wireless radiation. And that was also about the time that the Telecommunications Act was being written and the FCC was adopting its guidelines, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But this is the legitimate science, independent science on wireless radiation. We put this together for local officials who either don't think there's any science or want to know a little bit more about the science. I think there's 100 and some different references in there, so it's really worth having. Right under that, our no small cells, our kids live here. We have a bunch of rally signs that we designed for our first rally. You are absolutely welcome to take those designs, use them, fix them, change them, do anything you want. You know, we are here to provide you with stuff you can use, and if you can use that, that's great. Up on the upper right is our flyer that we just put out a couple weeks ago, or actually about a week ago maybe. This is safe ways to use technology at home. This is the one that talks basically about using hardwired connections in your home. If hardwired isn't an option for you and you really can't have Ethernet cables running through your whole house and you have no other options, there is the option to use these internet over electrical lines. We got some pushback on that, and I'm not surprised because in some circumstances, it can introduce quite a bit of electromagnetic fields and dirty electricity into your house's circuit, depending on how your house is wired. I reached out to Jeremy Johnson. He gave me a link to a video he's got. There's a really good video on his site. Some of you may know Jeremy. He's got a great TED Talk. If you haven't seen it, go take a look. He's spectacular, and you should really, we're lucky to have him. He's written books and he's just terrific. Also, last week, Patty and I have a radio show in New York. We were able to, we had an interview with Sheena Symington. Sheena also has on her website a really good video about how to wire your house safely with internet, and that's great. So right under that is our 411 card. We've had a lot of orders for these. These are two-sided, we call them palm cards. They're printed on thick material, great for handing out to people. It's the basic information on 5G. So most of these things are available for download off of the toolkit at no cost. Some of the things we actually print, like the door hangers, because they're a little bit tricky to print, and we offer them just above our cost. You can find everything on the 5G store, where we also have, t-shirts and bumper stickers and, other things that Zoe has talked us into. You've got your group organized. You've figured out what to do. What are your first steps? What's the first thing you should do? No question about it. This is a slam dunk. First thing you want to do is get a letter to the editor. Get in your local paper. We have a sample letter on our toolkit. You want to write the letter to the editor of your local paper. Include your basic contact information so people know how to get in contact with you. We normally recommend that you have neighborhood screenings or community screenings of Generation Zapped. For anybody who hasn't seen this amazing documentary, it is far and away the best recruiting tool we know of. So when the crisis is over, the current corona crisis, we strongly recommend that you get a hold of Generation Zapped, set up a film screening if you can at your local library. There's a small exhibition fee, and we are very respectful of the rights of the copyright owners. But usually libraries can take care of that. Again, great way to have people come in. You can collect their addresses, and you can build your group that way. Then we talked a little bit about message discipline, and I want to just emphasize how important this is. We have the science on our side, and we don't really need to exaggerate or go beyond the science. You really want to keep your messages focused on the science and rooted in that very credible, peer-reviewed, independent science when you're talking with the public, when you're talking with the press, especially when you're talking with elected officials. Sound bites are great. You can't go on and on like I'm doing now. In a public meeting, you want to have short phrases that really resonate, and we're happy to help you with those. I think you'll find a lot of them in our materials. And again, we want to avoid, hyperbolic language, as Zoe said, and keep in mind the difference between scientific evidence and anecdotal evidence. As my friend Sandra Steingraber says, the plural of anecdotes is not data. There's a difference between those two things. And I just will stop here and just mention that over the past few weeks, there's been a lot of speculation about the role of 5G in the coronavirus pandemic. There is some very strong research, as you know, on the ability of wireless radiation to do things like relax the blood-brain barrier and reduce, infringe kind of on the immune system. And there is a lot of good science on that. Could this be a factor in the spread or the severity of the coronavirus pandemic? You bet it could. Do we have good science making that link? No, we don't at this point. And so when we're asked about this, we say there's a lot of very good science indicating a possible link, but we can't yet make that positive causal link between 5G and coronavirus. Now, you're welcome to disagree. I'm sure there are people out there screaming at me that I can't hear because I have their mics turned off. But that's where we are. Again, we really rely on science, and it has served us well in Washington, locally here, and so on. Staying in touch during this time, I can't stress enough how important it is not to let down our guard at this time. We can't stop organizing. We can't stop reaching out. The wireless companies are not stopping. They're flooding the airways with ads for 5G. Their lobbyists are polishing their shoes and sharpening their pencils and getting their draft legislation ready to use in the next pandemic, stimulus bill. And so it's more important than ever that we are alert, we're organized, we're ready to push back. You must stay in touch with the people who have been part of your group in the past or are part of your group right now. Stay in touch with us and with the other groups working on this issue, and keep your group up to speed on developments. Here are just some basics. A regular time for your group meeting would be great. Skype and Zoom and Facebook Live are all great. A word about engaging with elected officials. This comes after years and years and years of experience. Big meetings don't generally work. Keep your meetings small. Pick a group of your 3 or 4 best spokespeople to make the meeting. Have a plan for your meeting. What's going to represent a win for you in your meeting? Figure out who's going to say what and try to stick to that plan. You're going to meet with some real jerks. I can tell you right now, there are some real idiots out there who think they know. They're going to be difficult. They're going to be argumentative. They may yell at you. So you will stay positive. You will be calm. You'll be factual. You'll be respectful, even if they're not. You're going to be for something and not just against 5G. We've got such a great argument here that wired technology is already in place in a lot of places. It's faster, it's safer, it's more secure. There are no privacy concerns like there are with wireless. Wireless can be hacked. Wired systems, much more difficult to be hacked. So end your meeting with a clear ask. Even if you don't get a yes at the time, you'll give them something to think about, and make sure you thank them for the meeting at that time, and send them a follow-up note when you get back home and say, thank you so much for the meeting. We enjoyed meeting with you, and we hope you follow that up. And again, on our toolkit, you will find the basics of successful lobbying. Please download it and read it before your next meeting. It will serve you well. Again, both Patty and I have been through years and years of lobbying on any number of issues. Grassroots actually got the first statewide legislation to ban pesticides on all schools, public and private, K through 12 in New York State. Still the best legislation any state has. And we were also very, 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 very involved in the New York State's decision not to allow fracking. So we've been through a bunch of political battles. We know our way around lobbying. We strongly suggest you read that book. Talking to the press, just a couple of quick tips. Make it personal. Make it all about your personal story. That's what the press wants to hear. Not just a recitation of facts, but about you. How is wireless radiation affecting you personally? How is it affecting your family? How is it affecting your neighbors? And again, we want to make sure that we're presenting the positive message as well as the negative. So we want to talk about the health risks. We want to talk about the science, but we want to talk about how it affects you directly. I can't stress enough how important earned media is. Earned media, the term stands for media coverage that you're not doing from a press release or anything else. This is where you're generating a story about you by calling up the editor, talking to them about it, talking to reporters. Earned media is great. Stories about your group are super, super important. You want to make sure that you're giving your reporter enough information, enough scientific information. I would recommend the 2-page flyer that I mentioned earlier as a great way to give them the basics about 5G. Okay, now, current campaigns. This is where the fun stuff is. And for those of you who knew everything that I just said, here's some stuff that you may not know. First of all, here's what we're working on right now. We are actively supporting local groups in their efforts to enact zoning policies to protect public health. We're working with individual groups. We're supporting Anna Eshu's bill in Congress that would roll back the FCC's decision and give power back to local officials to make decisions about the placement of small cells and other antennas in your neighborhood. I know that Anna Eschew's intent here is not about health. Her concern is about local control. But you know what? We're going to ride that bus anyway, because if she can get legislation to undo the FCC's draconian orders that have taken away and basically eviscerated local control, we're going to do it. The second thing we're doing, we are pushing back against the Secure 5G and Beyond Act of 2020. I think probably many of you saw the fact that this passed the other day with a voice vote, barely any discussion. I don't think there was any discussion. And of course, President Trump signed it with great flourish and put out a signing statement. We put out a rebuttal statement. It's up on our website. And Zoe, if you can put that up on the chat thing so people can, I urge you to go read it. It sets out our official position on the secure 5G. And basically our point is you can't secure an inherently insecure system. So rather than spending millions or billions of dollars trying to make something that's inherently unsafe, safe, and secure, let's spend the money on wired technology instead, and where everybody will be fine. One of our next Take Action Tuesdays is going to be directed at Abigail Davis Spanberger, a congressperson that I wasn't really aware of. She's the primary sponsor of the Secure 5G and Beyond Act of 2020, and she's going to hear from us, and we're going to need to have all of you chip in and make sure that you are contacting her office when we blow the whistle, because she's got to hear about this. This is nuts. This is what we can do with this coalition, and why it's so important that we're all, together. When we do things as a united group, it really has a big effect. And thank you for all of you who have been participating in our Take Action Tuesdays. We've had some great results. We try to keep them interesting. Sometimes it's a late Monday night head scratcher. What the hell are we going to do for a Take Action Tuesday? But eventually we come up with something, and some of them have been really, really successful. We appreciate all your help. As you know, there's a lot of noise about including wireless infrastructure in the next stimulus bill. So we're going to need to mobilize all of you and your friends and your friends' friends to get in touch with your congressperson starting next week and tell them to support wired, not wireless infrastructure. You might want to send them, we did a little 30-second video. I don't know if any of you got a chance to see it. It's a 30-second video about the FCC's recent decision to leave their health guidelines where they are. And it might be worth it if you can get send that video to your congressperson and get them to watch. Maybe, they have 30 seconds. I know they're busy, but they have 30 seconds that they could watch. And I think it might make them think twice about racing ahead with the wireless infrastructure. We are asking Congress for hearings. The FCC, as you know, has finally officially published its recent order, which sets in stone the human exposure guidelines that were developed back in the 1980s and adopted by the FCC in the late 1990s. I'm not kidding. That's what the state of the science was back then. And they just adopted those human exposure guidelines. And the other day, they finally published in the Federal Register their decision, which makes it kind of official. And now there are a couple of court cases that are going to go on, and we're rooting for these court cases to succeed and bring the FCC into court and let them explain what they're doing. That said, I'm not convinced that the courts are going to do that. And we never know, of course, what the FCC has up its sleeve. So we are engaging in a full court press to get Congress to hold hearings on the FCC's decision. We think this is a weakness we think the FCC might be vulnerable on this because of what seems to be the kind of head-scratching decision that they've come up with, that despite all of the science that's been done, they're going to stick with guidelines that were established 24 years ago. I think anybody would look at that and say, huh, really? No change? So we are going to really ramp up our efforts to get Congress to open up hearings. You're going to be hearing about that on our Take Action Tuesdays. We're going to be, contacting our friend Frank Pallone, who's in a position to call a hearing anytime he wants to and bring the FCC in and ask them some questions. Let's bring them in. Let's find out who actually reviewed the science, what expertise and what bias did they have? On what basis did they ignore the thousands of studies that are showing biological harm? Was there a systematic effort to exclude certain types of studies to produce the desired result? So I do think we have a good chance on this. Again, I think this is not a real technical matter. I think anybody can understand that exposure guidelines that were developed 24 years ago, before the iPhone was even an idea in anybody's mind, might want to be revisited. So we'll see how that happens. I wanted to mention the work of Bruce Kushnick and Scott McCulloch, known as the ear regulators. At least Bruce is. I don't know whether Scott wears that moniker as well, but they are doing a really unbelievably cool job with their legal effort to, this is regarding states that have been paying into a fund for years to support wired infrastructure, and the wireless companies have kind of quietly decided they're going to use it for wireless. If you go to the earregulators.org and take a look at what they're doing, I'm very excited about this. I think it's really great. Scott is just an amazing lawyer doing a terrific job, and Bruce has been on this for a while, and we wish them all the best. And I strongly suggest, if you don't know about them, go to that website and see what they're doing. Really cool. So there we have it. We've got legal cases that they're proceeding in various courts. We have the local efforts that are happening in cities and towns across the country. And we have our united action to build public opinion, which, as you know, is the only thing that beats money in Washington. That's about it for my presentation. We're going to open it up for questions. I want to leave you with two thoughts. Number one, we are here to help you. Don't hesitate to call. Don't hesitate to write. Tell us when we get things right. Tell us when we get things wrong. Our whole purpose here is to empower you, to help you grow your group and make your group as strong as it can be. And if there are things you need from us, things that would be helpful, I want to make sure that you let us know. Because if you need it, chances are other people could use it as well. Number two, we're going to win this battle. I know this because we're right. We have science on our side, and it's getting stronger every day. We're on the side of the angels, and eventually, maybe not tomorrow, maybe not next week, maybe not next month or even next year, but eventually we are going to win the battle over wireless, and everyone can go back to, more important things like family and family and family. So I wanted to say that. I want to say a giant thank you to all of you who have helped us with your financial contributions. We are a small nonprofit. Patty and I take no salary from any of our nonprofits, but we do have bills and expenses to pay. And so thank you. I didn't want to let the opportunity go by without saying thank you. So Zoe, do we have questions that need to be answered?
Hello.
There you are.
I'm sorry about that. I muted myself accidentally a little while ago. Yes, there are a couple of great questions that we got through the chats we've received, and thank you again all for sticking with us through this informative presentation. So, Doug, can you help us give us some examples of good, clear asks of our legislators after we're finished with the legislative meeting? What's kind of a key item we would want to something we'd want to see accomplished after our meeting?
Well, legislators, especially state legislators, are very fond of saying, "Oh, there's nothing we can do. This is a federal issue." And technically they are right. It is a federal issue, but that doesn't get them off the hook. There's a number of things that they can do. Some states are adopting legislation calling for a commission to look into the health effects of 5G. This is a great thing to do. It doesn't cost them anything. It usually passes. And it's terrific PR for us because it raises the question in the public's mind as to whether there might be some sort of a health problem with 5G. A lot of people are just beginning to hear about 5G for the first time, mostly from the ads for, T-Mobile and Verizon. But getting state legislatures or even local any town government, any local government, any city, anybody can establish a commission to look into the health impacts of wireless radiation. It's an easy ask. It's something that they could say no, but why? Especially if they're trying to, get you out of their office and please you. They'll, you know what? Okay, we'll take a look at it. And oh, by the way, we happen to have a sample on our website, so they don't have to invent it. You can give it to them, and all they got to do is write in the name of their state, their town, their village, their whatever, and there we go. And you can use that to. Hi. Patty's here.
I've been downstairs listening and making masks for all of our family and friends.
Okay. So again, I think that's an ask that you can have of your state and your local, your county legislators, anybody like that. As far as your federal legislators, I think the ask is pure and simple. The FCC is off the rails. They have gone completely out of their league. They are no longer following their mandate to protect public health. They are purely cheerleaders for the wireless industry, and Congress has a responsibility to pull them back, pull them in for a congressional hearing.
Yeah.
And maybe it's just, maybe your legislator will write a letter to the FCC saying, I want to know, how you came up with this decision. And letters are helpful. Hearings are even better. So let's get these guys in there and let's let them explain what they're doing.
And I just wanted to say one thing about the local elected officials. We have some here on Long Island, probably more than a half a dozen already, who have basically just said no to the telecoms and have said, just sue us. But we're not letting you put these small cells in our neighborhoods. And they're getting tremendous pressure from neighborhood associations, from individuals, from parents who have kids in schools, that are, within the communities, within those neighborhoods. And they're basically just saying, no, you're not going to do it. And so go ahead, sue us.
Yeah, an important tactic here. And if Paul McGavin's on the phone, I know he'll smile when I say this. Delay is your friend. Right? Anything you can do that kicks the can down the road, that prevents the wireless companies from actually getting the approval to put up their 5G is a good thing. Right. And that was the basis of the towns here on Long Island that have decided to say no. They said no on the basis of aesthetics and property value.
Right.
They were getting a lot of flack from local citizens who said, hey, Charlie, Johnny, I voted for you, and now you want to get this, you're going to approve this antenna that's going to be, 50 feet from my backyard, and I'm going to lose, $20,000 or $30,000 off my property value. Who's going to pay for that? And at one of the meetings we were at, there was a lawyer in the audience. He stood up and said, you guys, addressing the town board, he said, you guys have a choice to make. You're either going to get sued by the telecoms or you're going to get sued by your neighbors. And so the town board voted to say no to the telecoms. It was a great night.
Yeah, and Frank Clegg, who is a former Microsoft president, Microsoft Canada president, he came down and did a series of presentations with us about 2 months ago, maybe 3 months ago. And his message also in Stamford, Connecticut, and in New York City and here on Long Island was delay, delay, delay. Just keep throwing roadblocks, in the way, so that you don't get these telecoms with a signed contract. And it was an important message, and I think that people have heard that message and they're beginning to incorporate that into their activism.
Zoe, more questions?
Yes, we had a couple of folks asking about how to find those already active in your state. So if I live in Tennessee, where do I find other Tennessee activists to connect up with?
You can answer that question.
Yeah,
all right. Yeah, absolutely. So if you go on 5gcrisis.com, I can also post a link to this particular page on our website in a minute in the chat. But if you go to 5gcrisis.com, under Take Action and join a group, there's a list of the current a current list of the 118 groups across the 37 states, and every link is active and will lead you to that that organization's social media channel where that you can then connect up. So I'll post that in right now.
Yeah, I mean, you know, there is always the option of joining, instead of starting your own group, joining a group that's already existing. In fact, it's a better option. You know, we encourage you to, if you're not already associated with a group, go to that page, see if you can find anybody locally, and see what happens. What else you got?
We had a couple of questions about NEPA. We had a couple of questions about the satellites and bridging the digital divide in rural areas. Which one you want to take?
Well, let's just do NEPA quickly.
Yeah.
NEPA, the National Environmental Protection Act, Policy Act.
Policy Act.
And the FCC is required by law to abide by the terms of NEPA. And in return, and what the FCC does is they kind of delegate that responsibility to anybody that puts up an antenna. Anyone that puts up an antenna has to meet the requirements of NEPA. The FCC has set out some basic requirements for small cells that really is a fairly low hurdle for companies to jump over. But there was a period of time where the FCC tried to dismiss any responsibility for NEPA. And for a number of months, companies were filing applications for 5G antennas without the required paperwork. And that presented an opportunity for people to object to those applications and for the towns to say to the telecoms, I'm sorry, your application's not complete because it doesn't have the NEPA, the required NEPA paperwork. There are various levels of NEPA compliance. Most small cells get by with the guidelines that the FCC has developed. It is possible to challenge that and to go back to the FCC and to say, you know, we think these particular small cells ought to be subject to a full environmental assessment, not just the environmental checklist that you make them go through. The FCC could decide yes or no. If they decide yes, and they haven't yet, but people are still trying, if the FCC decides that a particular installation has to have a full environmental assessment, that triggers something really cool, which is that the wireless company has to certify that there is no community opposition. So that, well, so you know, obviously we would love it if every antenna had to go through the full environmental assessment. Unfortunately, the way the FCC has written their orders, and let me just stop and say parenthetically, FCC orders are not laws. FCC orders are only the FCC's interpretation of the law, subject to, you know, court decisions. And they've lost on more than one occasion where they've gone out with an order, for instance, the order that people with small cells didn't have to abide by the NEPA requirements, and they got slapped down by the district court. And thank you to the lawyers who brought that case. NRDC and Ed Myers and other people were involved, and thank you for that. And now bottom line, the NEPA thing is a hurdle that telecoms have to jump over. My experience is that it's not a high hurdle and many of them can meet that, but it does give us an opportunity to take a look at any application that's been submitted that's still pending and make sure that every T is crossed and every I is dotted.
And it also works into this whole delaying process, because if they haven't done it, then they have to go back and they have to resubmit paperwork. And so that just delays the whole process.
Yeah, I mean, look, there are ways to trip up your pretty much anybody on an application for a wireless. You know, there's no period at the end of this sentence. I'm sorry, you have to submit your application again. And there are towns that have done that and really, really successfully. Joey, remind me of the town that had so many objections. I think Susan Clark helped them with it. They had so many objections.
Was it Mill Valley?
Western Springs, Illinois.
Yeah.
Oh yes, Western Springs. That's correct. Illinois.
Basically, the telecoms went away. We haven't heard from them since, but we'll see. I'm sure they'll be back.
I have two more really quick important
Yep.
questions that
Yep.
just came up. So one question is, how do I find out where a small cell installation application, where a small cell might be placed, where they are placed in my community, where, you know, pending applications are? And the second question is, who specifically should I approach in my legislature, in my state legislature and locally, to address my my worries about 5G?
Okay, well, the answer to your first question is it's a really good question. And somebody, I was talking with somebody the other day about whether or not you can find it on antennasearch.com, and you can't, because the construction of a small cell antenna does not require a federal permit. So it's not, the federal government doesn't have a listing of where those antennas are. That's going to be done at the local level. So your town hall is going to have,
the town hall will have the application.
they'll have the application, and that should reveal the exact location of antennas and proposed antennas.
Right. They have to have a map, actually.
Yeah.
The telecoms are required to provide a map to the town exactly where those antennas are going to be placed. And there's an actual permit application for each one of those antennas.
As far as who exactly to contact, obviously you want to contact the representative that represents your area. And in addition to that, you want to look up the committees that they serve on, and any committee that is involved in communications, any committee that's involved in, you know, in commerce, depends on how they have divvied up the various committee functions. But you want to look for the heads of those committees and make sure that you're giving them.
Right, and just for a heads up, sometimes the energy committees in a state actually include telecommunications. I don't know why, but it's energy/telecommunications. You may not see the telecommunications part of that, but they are often combined.
Okay. Zoe, other questions?
Other questions? Yes, there were some questions about the satellites, and the impact that those could potentially have on the public, and again, bridging the digital divide in rural areas, and the you know, the financial means for doing something like that in terms of, you know, the telecommunications industry.
You know, I wish we were expertise. I wish we had more expertise on that. And I will say right up front, I don't feel qualified to really offer an opinion on that. One thing I will say is that I think that the fear that satellites in space will be broadcasting 5G across wide swaths of the world is not entirely accurate. As I understand it, these will be uplink and downlink satellites where you'll have a beam of microwave radiation aimed from a satellite directly at a receiver that's on the ground. It's not going to spread out and cover a 50-mile area. It's going to be a very narrow beam. Of course, nobody wants to be in that beam, and I don't know, and I'm not sure we have science yet on exactly what the size of that beam is or what the unintended consequences are. There are a lot of smart people out there and know way more about this than I do. It's a good question, though, and we will get on it and try to provide you with some good science as soon as it's available and some good answers.
Great. All right.
It's getting after 9. I thought we would, you know, I know other people, there are other calls tonight and other things. It seems like everybody scheduled their call for Thursday night. So I just want to say thank you to everybody that has been on the call. We are so appreciative of your support. And, you know, again, I can't emphasize enough, our job is to help you grow your organization. However we can do that, you'll let us know. So I have recorded this, and we will put it up on 5G Crisis. It'll be up tomorrow for anyone that missed it or missed part of it. And we'll put up all the links and all the things that we talked about there on the screen. So I think we're going to sign off for now. We have to stay up until midnight until they open up the small business thing so we can make our claim. Probably a lot of you are in that same boat. So we're going to end this event. Thank you so much to everybody who's been part of it. And we'll do another one of these next month, I think. So send us your feedback. Tell us what worked, what didn't.
and what it is that you would love to really focus on next time, because I think that this is a valuable exercise for all of us.
Yeah. Everyone, please be safe, stay home, wear a mask if you go out, and we'll see you next month. Take care.